Tell me about it.
Can you tell us who you are?
Yes, my name's Lee Perry.
And how did you come to shoot the video?
Well, I had worked a half a day that day in Manhattan, and I went home because we had a lot of stuff going on at the building, and I just had to be there a lot. And I was in my studio, and I just heard some loud shouting, and I just went to my window and looked out, and I couldn't believe what I saw with my own eyes. I went right for my camera right away, you know, because I've been documenting 111 since I moved in 1991, and everybody has, so everybody always had cameras rolling all the time, and so I had my camera right there, and I'm surprised I was the only one that got this footage, to tell you the truth, with everything going on. So I just rolled the camera until they got in their vehicle and left, and it took about, I think I probably got about maybe 5 minutes total on there, if that. The last 5 minutes of the party.
Yeah, well, it's really, I mean, it was fascinating that they felt so comfortable with being there and drinking that they could have cared less who could see them, because it was obvious from your angle that well, actually, let me ask that in the form of a question. How obvious was it for the angle of where they were? How visible were they to, like, the other streets and so on in the area?
There was plenty of street traffic going on. That's what I couldn't believe. That's what I was in amazement about, was the fact that they were just so out in the open and absolutely did not care at all. I mean, they were having a good time. They were actually celebrating. What it really was a celebration, and nothing was going to get in their way of celebrating. And they own the street, and they actually were watching cars go by as they were having their party. So yeah, nothing was going to stop them. You know, and it was for a warehouse district, the location was very busy. There was a lot going on with the demolition of 110 in front of our building, and other construction going around. There was plenty of traffic, and it was getting towards rush hour, so there was a lot of traffic going on, a lot of people.
So it seemed that once the video was taken, that you and a number of other people actually tried to get it out to other people. Can you tell us about exactly what that process was like?
Well, when I first shot the video, you know, I wasn't sure what to do with it right away. We had because we had a tenants association. We had a protocol of how we would deal with the building matters. Like, I wasn't going to take the video on my own and run out the door and go, you know, shopping it around or just showing it to everybody in sight. I wanted to go through the proper procedure, so I brought it to the tenants council, and we had the tape, and we were all trying to figure out what to do with the tape, because we knew that it was a hot tape at the time, and with everything going on in the building, we were under siege already. We had to be very careful about, you know, what we were going to do with the tape. Although we knew that we had to do something with it, and we weren't quite sure right away what to do with the tape. So we held on to it for a while and thought about it for a couple weeks while we dealt with all the numerous court cases and going to court and we had tenant cases, we had the historical preservation case going on, we had unsafe conditions going on. We were going to court. They had us going. They were hitting us from every direction. So we were very busy going in and out of court. And with this thing was so overwhelming at the time, we just kind of like, all right, let's just hold on to this thing and see what we should do with this, because we didn't want to go right out with it and then be retaliated against, in the building, or have something happen to somebody.
Now, what kind of retaliation were you concerned about?
Well, oh God, it could have been anything. It could have been someone getting beat up in the hallway. It could have been our vehicles getting blown up or getting the windows busted out, which happened. Anyway, it was happening anyway. I think we were afraid of some physical type of altercation coming down. And we didn't want. We had women and children in the building, senior citizens. We just wanted to be real careful, because we didn't want. That was our main goal. Was like we didn't want anybody to get hurt, because we couldn't. It was already so bad that if somebody would have gotten hurt during that whole thing, it just would have devastated us beyond repair. What would we do if someone got hurt because of this tape that I shot? We knew that we had to be real careful with it, and that's as a group, as a tenants association, we just kind of kept it under wraps and dealt with the matters at hand as the weeks were and the days were unfolding, through the crisis, and there was a lot going on at that time.
Could you kind of discuss some of that?
Sure. I shot the tape on, I thought it was a Tuesday, but they said it was the 13th, which was a Wednesday. I'll give them that. It was either a Tuesday or Wednesday, but I'm pretty sure they have it right. If they're going by, I would have to hear my voice recorded to believe them that that it was actually the 13th. But it was either one of those 2 days. But so that was the 13th. Then we had, but prior to that, we had the studio tour on the 2nd and 3rd, which was a lockdown studio tour where the public wasn't allowed in the building, and they had the police, block all the doors and make sure that nobody who wasn't a tenant were allowed in the building until we had some court order passed, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, which allowed the people to come in, and I was amazed by the support that we had by the public, who waited outdoors and chanted, "Let us in," for a long time before they finally were allowed in the building. But that was the 2nd and 3rd. The 6th of October, which was only 4 days later, the historical preservation ordinance was passed, which was a big deal, because now all of a sudden the building had protection against the demolition. So a week later, the cop video was made. From that was October 27th. The city council voted in the Powerhouse Arts District, which now was an ordinance that said that 10% of all units built in that Powerhouse Arts District were going to be designated for low income or market rate space for artists. And so that was another blow to the main plan of the demolition. Our landlord, all they wanted was to demo this building. That was their main goal, main objective. And here for 15 or 17 years prior to that, we were working with a city who believed in historic preservation, had all these plans of developing this downtown area and restoring the cobblestone streets and making this really beautiful revised city, and which really needed to be done if Jersey City wanted to compete with Big Brother across the river. It was a chance. It was a real vital moment where the city could have really become something and developed into a real cultural hub. So that was the 27th. Now, on the 2nd, there was an election for mayor, which Jeremiah Healy, it looked like he had won, but they had to have a count, which lasted another 10 days which turned up he won by a narrow margin of a couple thousand votes over L. Harvey Smith. So he was sworn in on the 12th of November. But in between the election and the swearing in, we had an arson on November 7th, the night before we were going to court to protect us from getting evicted based on unsafe conditions. They were trying to convince the courts that the building was unsafe and that nobody should be living in that building. Meanwhile, demolition crews were dismantling the building underneath us while we were in it, making these unsafe conditions. So the Healy was sworn in on the 12th, and then on November 21st, a couple weeks later, there was a news crew came in to do a story on the arson and the studios that got flooded out underneath because it happened on the 4th floor. And the water just devastated every studio underneath it for the 3 floors and left and right. And they were escorted out of the building by the off-duty police officers hired by Lloyd Goldman in building management. So in between all that whole timeline, everything going on, we were in and out of court and everything going on. So finally after the news crew got escorted out of the building, we said, well, we got to bring this tape to City Hall. We got the new mayor's in. Now's the time to see if what he's gonna do about us. Is he gonna help us, or this is obviously some really unconstitutional acts going on here. So we brought the tape to him on the 23rd. We had a meeting with him. And the Tenants Council handed over the tape, which I was not present at. I wasn't present for the viewing of the tape, or I didn't even hand it to him personally.
Was there a reason for that?
No, this is the way the Tenants Council wanted to handle it. They just said, "Okay, we'll take it," because it was hard to even talk to the government. So we had to have representatives that would be able to deal with all that communication, and. So that's how we did it, and no one ever called me in to discuss it or anything.
Well, that's interesting because when we interviewed Internal Affairs said, "Oh, well, we would have loved to have talked to him at the time."
Yeah, well, nobody tried to call me or anything, and actually. One of the tenant council members was contacted from the mayor's office and asked and said, I think we should call them up, but they would like to talk to you. And I said, okay. Well, they didn't contact me. They contacted the tenants council, which contacted me and asked me to call a number. And I can't even remember the sergeant or who I talked to. I can't remember his name. But I called him, and he just said, my guys were a little out of hand that day, And I was like, yeah, I guess so. And what do you need from me? And he goes, well, I just want to know what day and time it was shot, and what window it was from. And I told him, and we thought it was the 2nd floor window. Oh, we were wrong. I was like, yeah, well, it's the 3rd floor. And, okay, all right, well, thank you. We'll take care of it. Thank you very much. And I was just like, okay, now what, We thought we brought it followed the right procedure, We brought it to the mayor himself, the boss of the police department, or we never heard anything about it.
So, in other words, up until did you ever read the report, the statement that we were sent by Internal Affairs?
You mean on the website, on the JC list? Yes, I did read that. Yes,
okay, so in other words, prior to you reading that on JC list, you had really there was no statement at all about what.
I tell you the truth, when I read it, I didn't even know it was a it was actually what was going to come out in the paper the next day, and I didn't even find out until someone called me and said, "Oh, the story's in the paper." So I had no idea. I mean, I'm not on the computer a lot. I'm still a hands-on worker, you know, and I don't spend a lot of time on the computer, so I wouldn't know unless someone called me and told me, and that's what happened. And I read it, you know, more thoroughly. And I was just hoping that they would take care of the situation and something would come out of it. Whether you know they would come down and take the police force out of the building, but that didn't happen. It didn't happen. And actually, they turned the heat up a little bit, because that's when the cars got smashed up. It happened at like 4 o'clock in the morning while the officers on duty went up for a coffee break. Like, they left for a coffee break. It was like a 15-minute span where they weren't there at the time when the cars got broken into and smashed up, although nothing was stolen. So the things were still happening, and we were just like, wow, we're reeling. We were just totally reeling, like, couldn't believe it. The mayor obviously had backed out after 15, 17 years of having support of the city government, having us believe in this whole community. All of a sudden, this guy Jeremiah Healy, who got elected in 2 weeks before, just said, he washed his hands. "I'm not helping you guys. I'm not standing." And he was on the city council who voted all this stuff in. We just couldn't believe. We thought we were going to be okay with the new mayor, And but nope, he washed his hands of us, and we were totally on our own, hung out to dry at that point. And it wasn't until we actually went into court on January 1st or 2nd, that we actually were forced into a settlement. And when that happened, the next day, all of a sudden, the cops were gone, the demolition crew was gone, the building was all of a sudden safe enough for us to be in. The police they had to be there the whole time because we were such troublemakers. But now all of a sudden, since they made a settlement, now all of a sudden there's no problems with the building. It's not going to collapse with us in it or anything else. And now that everybody's gone, and now we have 2 months to get out of the building. So and it was just the whole other events that really got to me were the fact that the people that they had, because the arson was caused by a gas leak, they had disconnected. Oh, now they got to disconnect the entire heating system and find out if there's any other leaks. So they dismantled the whole thing. They had no heat in the building, and they finally make an arrest. A couple of building employees that working for Lloyd Goldman in building management get arrested for obstructing justice. Yet nothing came out about it. Their pictures were never published. We didn't know who they were. Nothing ever escalated out of the arson investigation, and all of a sudden, the arson investigation's closed. Yet the people who were suspects and people that were working for building and arrested were the ones that were doing the repairs on the pipe. It was just so beyond. Yeah, the city let them do this. So it was like, okay, it's like the whole city, the whole fire department, the whole police department, the demolition company, and everybody against us. and everybody else is on the payroll, and we're not. Okay. So it just got dragged out while these cops were obviously celebrating the fact that they were making all this money. And I'm not going to say that all the cops were bad, because there were some good ones that got used and thrown into the situation that didn't even live in Jersey City. They live out in Maplewood or out in the suburbs somewhere, and they get their detail. They'd come in. They had no idea. Their detail was that they were led to believe that we were squatters not paying rent. And they had this whole brainwashed theory of what really was going on, which was totally not the case that was going on. We may have had some people that were behind in their rent, but for the most part, everybody was on the up and up with their rent. And I've been paying rent every month since I was 16 years old. So, that's the first thing that gets paid every month. You need your roof over your head. It was just mind-boggling. I had faith in the court process. I was just hoping that we were in our court, and we know that we're right, and that if we can hold on in court, that that maybe we would come out of it. But we got terrorized before we could even get that day in court where we would have a jury, or and we ran out of money, and it just was over. But like I even asked a couple of the officers that were on duty, have you ever had a detail like this in your life? And they said no. And this is the worst. This is the worst thing I've ever had to do as a police officer. But Christmas is coming, and I have 3 kids, and I need the money, to be honest with you. And I was like, I understand that, but it's your choice. Do you have a choice? I wasn't sure whether they had a choice or whether they were told to go down. I don't know how that works. So I didn't know how they were getting paid, whether they were getting paid directly from the landlord, or if the landlord paid the city and then the city paid them. I don't know how the money trail was going. Excuse me. But a lot of them were there totally dark, not even understanding the whole situation at all. And then there were the bad ones that were there to enforce and let things happen, in the building and look the other way. So, I couldn't believe that at the time that the drinking video didn't rise up and didn't get published at that point. At the time, it just looked like to me that nobody cared, and like, this is how it is. This is how it is. This is how it's going, and tough luck.
Right. So it seems that from everything that because we've talked to a number of different sources now that were involved with this, and it seems like as we have you obviously know of the Jersey City list arguments that are going on, and the idea that people were saying, hey, this is an old issue, who cares now? And it's like, it's interesting because as we talk to people, it seems like they didn't care then. That it's not something that was, it's not something that, like, now it's past its prime. It had never had an actual prime showing or airing and so on and so forth. But you had mentioned, I just want to go back to something a second. You had mentioned that there was a news crew that was in there. So we know that now, because we will have on the site the Japanese video. So can you talk about how that came about and what that process was? I can't speak for Shandor Hassan, who was studio and who was having the interview, but he was directly underneath where the arson occurred, so he got the bulk of the flood, and his neighbors obviously too. Was he the one that brought in the crew? Yes, he brought in the crew, and there's actually 2 crews there that day. There was a crew from the Star Ledger as well, a reporter and his photographer, and those 2 were also escorted from the building. From the Star Ledger. That was, I remember the writer too, is Alexander Lane, because he did put out a story, very vague story of what really went on. But he, I remember he put up some resistance, and that footage is actually in the Japanese video as well, of the cops escorting, trying to get him out of the building. So that's in there. And but Shandor, I don't know how he did it. You'd have to talk to Shandor, but he got this news crew in the building, and they were setting up to do an interview in his studio, and they were actually in his studio. And apparently the cops came right in. They didn't even knock. They walked right through his door, right in, and asked the news crew to leave. And as soon as the news crew saw the cops and they agreed. They packed up and they scooted out that door so fast, because at that point I witnessed them leaving. Because I was coming home, or I was in between something, and I remember walking in the front of the building and seeing the news truck and the whole crew just packing up and getting in and driving away. And I was like, what happened? You know what I mean? And they go, oh, well, they're not allowed. They were not allowed, and people were just like outraged. The fact that the news crew, I'm like, is this America? I'm like, and that was the whole gist of my whole thing was like this whole thing was so un-American. I can't believe that somebody with so much money and the power can pit working people against working people.
You know, like, I mean, most of the officers don't even know how hard we work. You know, they didn't look at it like they looked at us like a bunch of hippie squatters, and they just they just weren't educated about it. But towards the end, some of them were. You know, some of them started to get it, and when they would walk through, and they'd walk through our studios and see the work that was being done, see it was serious work, and you know, some of them started to get it. So like, we had some sympathizers in the police department, and they felt, you know, a lot of people felt bad, but they were just doing their job. They would just say, "Oh, well, I'm just got to do my job here," you know. So it was sad, you know, to see everybody put in these positions, and it was an education for me too, because I was recovering from a really bad back injury, and I had limited mobility at the same time. I was being forced to haul heavy machinery, and we were in moving mode, you know, helping people move out, and it was a constant schlep for like 4 months with a broken back. So I had a lot on my plate to deal with, as far as just trying to get through each day, you know, and get everybody out safe. That was the main concern.
Well, it seems that the term squatter had been used so many, like, has come up in so many different ways. Now, did you find it odd that on one side you're being called squatters and all this stuff, but then for over a decade you're talking to the mayor, you're talking to the city council, you're talking to all these people that are on record of supporting you and saying, like, you know, as a matter of fact, not only are you not squatters, but you're going to be the anchor in this new development thing we're doing. So, I mean, and certainly on the Jersey City list, there was a number of people who used the word squatters. And, well, I remember one specifically, and I think that the term came up a couple of other times, but it's very interesting. I guess I just found that bizarre once I started finding out about all, because I had no idea of all the ordinances and, like, you know, the Powerhouse District and all this other stuff. So can you kind of talk about that a little bit? Because it seems like, you know, there was a lot of people who had done a lot of work to get this sanctioned, and it seemed like everybody was on board for a long period of time, including the developer himself.
Absolutely. That was exactly. I mean, we were led to believe like that we were all on the same page, and for all these years, and this was good. Everybody wanted this, and it was good for the community. It was going to be great for the development of that whole area, because they were using this whole idea as this concentrated arts center, you know, to lure people in because this is what's going on here. This is what you're buying into. And this is what you're going to get for your money. And it's a great place to bring up kids with all this culture and all this, you know, creative energy happening. And they used it. That's what they were going to use to sell the whole package, the whole area and the whole city as it was growing. How it was going to rise into this, you know, into what the planners called Paris on the Hudson. So. Well, Paris was burning, big time, you know, and it just was a sock in the gut. I was just like, I couldn't believe like that one person that could get elected and they could just take that all away, all that work, 17 years of building this community, and was it a plan, you know, from the higher ups the whole time just to use? Because now by that time they had all the images that they needed to show this vibrant art community and everything going on. So they really need us there anymore? They had all the images. They had, you know, the studio tours, the fact that the last, you know, we had a May Day celebration arts festival that brought like 4,000 to 5,000 people to the building and to the city. You know, if that wasn't helping the economic, you know, all the street traffic and the cafes and what they wanted to build Jersey City as, because up until that point, what is it? There's, you know, we have Liberty State Park, thank God. You know, with the Ellis Island Museum, and This Liberty Science Center, another really nice addition to the city. But what's there? There's really nothing. There's not even a music venue to see live music in Jersey City. They don't want it. You don't need it, because now it's all built. The images is there, and now the towers are all up, the building's gone, and the artists are just wherever they ended up, scattered all over the place.
So I'm so dumbfounded by the idea of, to me it's such an interesting story, yet so many organizations that are responsible to actually investigate, to ask serious questions, and to hold people's feet to the fire. Like, if these politicians were so supportive for so many years, and again, visibly supportive, that could be tracked, not just somebody was giving you a little lip service on the side, then to me, the idea of a reversal in this kind of very weird and very contentious way, that would spark somebody's interest. So you have a news crew being removed from the building, a camera crew. You have the Star Ledger, which is one of New Jersey's biggest newspapers, being removed, which again is caught on video by the other news team that was also soon thrown out.
Well, and other tenants too had cameras rolling, and the police officers that were inside the building let cameras roll. Some of them didn't want. Some of them would put their hand up if they didn't want to. It didn't want to be on tape. But a lot of them didn't even matter. It didn't matter. They just let us record everything that was going on. So at the time when I was shooting the drunk tape, it was like another. It was like I'm documenting again. It's documentary footage. So I had no second thoughts about shooting. Well, should I shoot this or not? Of course I'm going to shoot it. We're shooting everything, and that's why I just I just picked up my camera instantly. It was just an instant reaction. Just get the camera right away and get it going.
Well, there was one time during the video that you kind of ducked down.
Yes.
Could you kind of explain what that was?
Well, I was shooting out my window, and it looked like that one of the officers looked up at me, so I just ducked. I just went down, with the camera.
How were you shooting?
Standing up. I was shooting standing up.
You act like you have the camera in front of you?
Yep, I was just like this, pointing with the angle down.
Oh, wow, because we actually thought that you were shooting like this with the screen, like with a flip screen. Did you have a flip screen?
No, I don't use a flip screen. I use the old school. I use the viewfinder.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I can't hold a camera and do this thing and make sure it's in. I got to be right on the with the viewfinder in the frame. That's my style. No, I was standing right up. They never even looked up except for the one time, and I don't think he was so drunk that I don't think that he even saw him. Well, he didn't see me because he never made a thing, about it. And I came right back up and recorded the rest.
So once you have the tape, now the tape is out, you get the tape to Healy. Healy says what to the council?
The word I heard through the council was that all he said was, "We have a problem down there," like it was new news. Wrong. They didn't really have the story right either in the newspaper, But what story was right in the newspaper? It was always. It seemed like that, that they were because we didn't have enough money. Or whatever, we weren't our story wasn't gonna be told. Whoever had the most money, their story was gonna be told, and they had a battery of lawyers and if you read all the stories that were in the newspapers during that whole time, they had a lot to say, and that's what got published in the newspapers.
So basically, they seem to side with the developer, and then nobody even took to, like, okay, well, there's this drunk video of these cops. Now, under any other circumstance, I think that they have. I say that they would have been more public, but then I was told by Internal Affairs that that process is confidential. I was also told by Internal Affairs that there had been other incidents since. He didn't enumerate exactly how many, but we do know that there were more. Because I asked them, were there more events, to encapsulate the conversation? Were there more events? He said, pause, yes. So, why do you think that the police, I guess why the Attorney General's office, would actually have a ruling that would allow this to all happen in private, since you're the one who actually broke the story and it wasn't there, which I said to Internal Affairs, to Captain O'Callaghan, very nice guy, but I mean, like, come on. Like, the idea of this being private when it was a public citizen that actually caught it. It wasn't like Internal Affairs or a supervisor was driving around. I mean, there were supervisors there getting trashed with them, for God's sakes.
Yeah, I think it's been going on for a long time. I mean, I grew up in a small town, and our sheriff was a known drunk. Everybody knew it. But then again, I can't point the finger because I like to have a few drinks every now and then. It's not. I think it's. I don't know if it. I know that a lot of officers are under a lot of stress, and there's a lot of stress to being a cop and putting yourself in danger all the time. But these guys were celebrating. This wasn't any stress that I could see. These guys were celebrating the fact that they were in this situation where, I don't know if they felt like more powerful because they were kicking our asses, or what was, maybe it was one of their birthdays. I don't know. And why it kept quiet, I think, was just because, I don't know, it was like this weird taboo. Nobody wanted to touch it. I remember talking to the reporters that were covering the story, and we'd mention it, and they would say, "Oh, we're not, we don't want to, we're not going to, we can't touch that." Why not? Well, maybe because they were under somebody's control. That's what it seemed like, and I can't prove it, but it just seemed like that if you weren't on the payroll, then you were on our side, and you weren't going to get much. It was just, they had it under control. They knew exactly what they were doing, and that's just the way it is. That's what I came out of this thing back then thinking. Well, this is how it works, and you can hear a million stories like this across the country about gentrification and artists, and not even artists, just low income people in neighborhoods and communities that just happen to be, it was a low income place at one point, but just happens to be on a riverbank or something, and now all of a sudden it's waterfront, and somebody with a lot of money can come in there and they can make a lot more money if they can remove this situation and build a lot of units or whatever. And this is how they go about it. I just felt like that, we weren't given, our rights were stripped, because, they said that we had commercial leases. Well, when I signed my lease in 1990 or 1991, it was a 3-year lease. And then when that lease was up, they promised me over and over again that we were going to renew the lease, and at the same time, it was an open secret. It was already out, the fact that everybody knew we lived there. The building management was building bathrooms and kitchens for people. The workers that worked for the building owner. Everybody knew. They were letting it happen, and so as time went on, we're thinking, wow, now we're in the next century, and it's 2000. 3, and yet we still don't have any lease. And you know, they were supposed to bring the, we're talking, you know, about bringing the building up to code, and so that we could have a residential status and the zoning could change and all that. It was all in the works, and we were led to believe that this was the route we were going, and we thought, wow, maybe this is a precedent, you know, for once, maybe this will work. And that's, I think, what the majorities believed, that this was going to work, and that we were going to be the ones to finally say, look, it can happen, you know, we can work together and create this thing. And you know, and we're not going to be used to gentrify, you know, although everything around us was going to the moon, you know, with the buildings, and it would have happened whether, you know, we were there or not, you know, whether we had an art community. It looks like that Newport would just, you know, start building south, and it was going to happen. But we had this historic thing going. We really wanted to preserve. I'm a preservationist. I work for historic buildings and restore them. So that's why that was partly my interest, and partly all these amazing people that I come to know over the 15, 17-year period. It was like it was a family.
Do you think that do you think that the journalists were afraid of something?
I think the journalists, this is entirely my opinion, I think they were totally controlled by their editor, and I don't think they really had much freedom. But it was their job. It was like you know, the Jersey Journal. It's not really a great newspaper, really. You know, it just, like last year, went to like a tabloid kind of format. You know, I don't know whether they think that that's going to sell papers or whatever it is, but the journalists, you know, that were working, I think they were just controlled. I think they would hear the story, hear what everybody had to say, and then they would bring it, and the editor would strip it down and shape it the way they wanted to have it, and that was it. And then we'd see the reporter say, "Hey, how come you didn't say this? How come you say that?" And they'd just be like, "You know, I can't. I did, but it just didn't get in." You know, and that was the problem, is that the truth was being manipulated by some higher up, some editor of the paper or something.
Right. It's very interesting. Even when they posted in the news story when they said what Sector 6 Communications was, or SXK.com, they never said Sector 6 Communications, but that even though I spelled it out for him in the whole 9 yards, he had said that it's posted on the website SXK.com that was started in 1990. Now, as I had said in the pre-interview, had he just gone to our homepage, the first text you read is, first it explains what we do, and then a thumbnail of exactly, a little snapshot of exactly how we started and what our motivations are. So he could have easily seen the dates and everything of what we did when we transformed from an arts organization that was just producing, events forward. So, I got a bird's eye view of the idea of it seems like they're doing stories. Now, he's supposed to be an investigative reporter. Again, a very nice guy. He contacted me. He called me up. He was just like, we'd love to talk to the shooter, so on and so forth. Do you know who the shooter is? At that point, of course, I did not know that it was you. Mm-hmm. I don't know why it seems that he's so lackadaisical about exactly, making sure that, like, what I was told is right. Like, whatever he was told was right, and, like, verifying it the way that anybody would. Now, we're doing this on our own dime, while he's, as far as I know, paid to be an investigative reporter. Now, you have them, you have the Star Ledger, and then you have the Village Voice. Now, out of all those papers, the Village Voice is known for being, like, you know, arts friendly, known for being a muck breaker, you know, breaking the story, getting behind the story, or at least that's the way that's the story that's propagated. How did you feel when even a relative of one of your lawyers, I think it was a son of one of your lawyers, was actually working for the Village Voice, and the Village Voice still refused to cover your story?
Yeah, I wondered, you know, are they on the payroll too? I mean, I just couldn't, I couldn't figure it out. I just, the more and more I learned about our landlord and learned how much, you know, how much they're worth, I was like, oh, well, you know, I mean, it's like, it's bazillions of dollars. They're, you know, there's half owners of the World Trade Center. That's how probably the biggest real estate people in New York City. I mean, so when I learned that stuff, I was like, well, I mean, there's just so much money there that they can do anything they want, and I just felt like, well, then they must be getting paid too, because, you know, why wouldn't they, you know, run the story? The Village Voice, of all people, you know, you would think that story would have been picked up, but it wasn't. And even the New York Times came and did a few stories, and they kind of just glossed over it. It wasn't like, you know, no one talked about the police state, the fact that, you know, that the constitutional rights were being broken. Nobody talked about that. It just would not get printed.
Did anybody discuss the idea of the Powerhouse District elements of the story? The idea of, like, how many of those stories actually went in depth on the politicians that and actually asked the politicians, why did you change your mind? No, I don't think they ever went in depth with that, because it didn't get it. You know, by the time when Healy pulled the plug on the support, you know, it was like, oh God, it was all this, now this next mode, like, oh, we're lost, you know, we're gonna have to get out of the building now. And no one even cared to talk to any of the politicians about that stuff. It was all about, the focus was us getting out of the building and where are we going. You know, they never talked about the flip flop, you know, on the whole thing, you know. Yeah, it just got glossed over, you know, what was really going on there. Wow.
And
do you think that now that the story is out, that something will happen? Or let me put it this way. Why did you give us the video?
Well, I didn't personally give you the video. I gave it to friends of mine had the video, and I'm not sure which one of my friends dropped it off. But you know, because they knew where to drop it off, and they thought that, you know, it was worth definitely dropping it off to S6K. You know, it was like, this is the place where we need to drop this thing off. I pretty much, since those days, have been just pretty much trying to rebuild. You know, I lost so much, and I pretty much had to start from the ground up. And so I've been, you know, and I'm not a computer person, so I was shocked when it came up again, and I was like, holy cow! I couldn't believe that somebody cared about it now. I mean, it was like holy cow! This is. It was shocking, but I was glad. I was like, wow, this is really good. I mean, maybe some good can come out of this, you know, somehow, so it doesn't happen again, or it can enforce some change. Hey, if that little 5 minutes of video can help out someone down the road, I'm all for it, you know. And I'm glad that you guys ended up with the tape. again, I was shocked and pleased at the same time. I was like, wow. And then I got another call. Oh, the Jersey City list. I had never been on that website ever. You know what I mean? I mean, since then I've realized that that Jersey City's not a friendly place for a person like me. So I pretty much I have a lot of friends that I love still there, and I come through there a lot. But it's not something that it's not a place that I want to invest any time into. I invest my time into places where I know now that it's going to be appreciated and do some good. And I was just very pleased that that you guys got a hold of this tape. Very happy about it.
Right on. Well, thank you. Well, what would be your hope? In other words, if you had your druthers, what would happen?
Well, if I had my druthers, I would hope that a city government wouldn't be able to use their police that way, in a private, that anybody could just go up and hire a uniformed cop with a gun and have him do anything you want. That's what I would really love to change, and not be able to happen again. Because right now, if I were in Jersey City and I wanted an officer with a gun and a badge, I could hire him. Apparently, the rate's $45 to $50 an hour.
You're kidding me?
No.
Nobody's ever told us that.
That's what I was told. And so I mean, I hope I'm never in a circumstance where I would ever need to have to think about hiring a police officer to guard something, if that could be stopped, like the government, no more off-duty police officers privately hired, in public with guns, that would be great. That's what I would hope, that I want to look up to an officer. I want them to set a good example for the children, and make it better, not make it worse, because things are getting worse. I'm at that age now where I'm starting to sound like an old person saying, wow, remember when I was a kid, it wasn't like, I'm scaring myself because I'm starting to get old now, where I'm the one who I heard my elders saying, wow, that wasn't like that when I was that, that age. And but just in my short 45 years, that things are getting worse, they're not getting better. So, what do we do? I mean, I'm an artisan, so I don't try to change things with my paintings or anything like that. So, hey, if this little piece of video can do something, fine. I didn't really mean it to, but now that somebody cares about it and people are talking about it, then it's positive.
Mm-hmm. Now, there was somebody who had posted, I guess they were well-intentioned because we kind of took it that way. Somebody had posted, you don't have the right to sell that video. Now, on our site, we post the idea that we had no intentions on selling the video. Like, to who? We're going to sell it to TMZ or whatever. They don't care. There's, you can't see Britney's panties in it. So, so it's funny, of course we had no intentions on selling the video, but it was like they were speaking up for you, that they were they were defending your honor.
Well, whoever they were, thank you very much for that. But more power to you. If you can sell it, go for it. You have my permission. Okay? But no, they didn't read your site. They didn't go to your site. They should have. I mean, that's the first thing I did when I saw, who is this and who put this out? SXK.com. I went right to your site and read the whole thing and saw, wow. I was amazed. I was like, wow, this is really amazing. I was like, wow, this is really amazing. I can't believe these guys are really awesome. And I was like, whatever. I was so glad to get your call. I got your call. I was like, yeah, whatever you need for free. It's like, no, this isn't about money. You know what I mean? Not our end. You know what I mean? That's why we weren't on the payroll. Back then it was never about the money. You know, it was about this community, and then this growing city, the city that was being shaped, and you know, and it was exciting. It was I don't regret one bit of it. You know, it was horrible to go through. I'm glad we all made it out, and now the story's still being told, which is really because of you guys, and you guys care enough to do it. My hat's off to you. You know?
Right on. In the last couple of minutes, can you just say like what it was like to like leave people with a snapshot of what it was like to be part of that community?
Oh, God. It was amazing. The creative, you know, the creative energy that was going around, like you would never feel like it was the inspiration. I mean, that's what all artists need, is this inspiration to create in the creative process. It was happening 24/7, and there were so many different, unique artists and artisans in the building that even if you wanted to go out of your medium and just go hang out with another artist, that you would learn. It was like you were learning at the same time you were creating and being inspired, all at the same time, and it never ended. The energy was so great, and a lot of the art and the music and everything that was created at that building reflected that. And that's what I remember from the building, is just the creative spirit flowing full force, non-stop, you know, 24/7. You know, and it just inspired everybody. Was inspired by everybody else and the things that were created. It was just a thing of beauty, and that's why we thought it was so unique. You know, I mean, I'm sure it's been done before, but when you have 200 to 300 artists concentrated in one building, it's a unique situation. You know, no matter however you slice it. You know. From furniture builders to potters to photographers to musicians to puppeteers to dancers, embroiderers, fashion designers. It just goes on and on and on. Cabinet makers, guitar makers. It just goes on and on. The list goes on. It was just a vast spirited community.
Right on. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you too for taking this on.